businesses that were failing that they wouldn't give money and they would be continue to fail, while some would be failing and given money enough to stay afloat. So it was a two-sided coin, but it seemed like the right decision to make sure that everyone had their fair share. So also the Bank of England reduced the amount of capital needed to that the banks need to set against lending. So this means like instead of setting X amount of money to set against lending, like it says, you could take that X amount of money and put it to the small businesses or the medium businesses, things so that other businesses and the economy would stay stimulated. Overall, the plan generally worked. Some small businesses failed. It wasn't the worst plan, but wasn't the best. Bank of England also agreed not to pay dividends in 2020, and you could only accrue dividends in 2021 to allow banks to focus funding on the smaller businesses. It also allowed the banks and building societies to have less costs than they were already getting, essentially giving them a break, make sure they didn't fail. So the last thing I'll talk about is diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the bank began its late efforts in 2016 to promote diversity within itself. Began to have speeches, different diversity or or like it says, the bank finds its voice. But this didn't happen until 2016. But since 2016, they've done better in getting more and more speakers and more things inside or in-house about the bank to try to promote DEI within themselves. So within the community, they want to be a role model of diversity and inclusion. So they feel like if they can set an example of being diverse and inclusive, then it can reflect on the rest of the community. So they made it a priority to promote inclusiveness, making it easier for other people. They also created a network of minority workers called the Bank of England's Ethnic Minorities Network, or BEAM, as well, which was established to inform, inspire. A quote from their site. So established to inform, inspire, advocate, and promote Black, Asian, and minority ethnic related matters in the bank. So to continue off that, in 2020, they took a step back to assess how they've been doing DEI wise with the incident with George Floyd. They had to have a recoup because they didn't feel like they were doing enough to promote DEI within themselves. And so they had a study done by an outside group. Review chair Diana Noble found that the bank wasn't doing nearly enough that they could. And as we saw, if they thought that just having speeches was going to help promote DEI, they needed to do much more. She did, however, praise the employees and their efforts to promote change, suggested that the only way to be inclusive is if the entirety of the bank was brought into change. So by having more and more people connected and doing better things within the bank, they were going to lead to better places.
Okay, so the second part of our project is focusing on our Onda trading experience, and overall, it was very educational to use this trading program. And our initial thoughts when we immediately concluded this was it was much more difficult than we had anticipated. And the short period of time we had in this class made that 2% we needed to earn a little bit more difficult than we initially expected. And so overall, we would describe our trading experience as very realistic. And at the beginning, we were very safe if we were to reflect on it now, which we are. And we didn't want to make large purchase orders at the beginning because we wanted to start off safely and limit losses. In order to achieve this, we stuck with the major currencies because we felt they had more stability and we were a little bit more familiar with them. However, we never saw a significant gain or loss early on, which is why we never really made a large purchase order until the end of this project. And I think the biggest reason why we didn't want to go big or go home was that we could get a deduction in our grade. Whereas if it was just if you made money, you get extra credit. I think we would have been uber aggressive, but knowing our group, we just wanted to be a little safe, and we were at the end of the day too safe. So we traded most of the major currencies, which later on we think maybe we should have stuck with one or two, but we traded the dollar versus the yen, the euro versus the dollar, the euro versus the yen, the euro versus the Canadian dollar, and the Australian dollar versus the United States dollar. And then we wanted to make sure we at least tried one other non-major currency and just to get the learning experience and see how we did. So that's why we did the Australian dollar versus the Hong Kong dollar. And it wasn't just a shot in the dark why we picked this one. At the time, we were using the 1 day and 1 week charts primarily because this was early on in our experience. And because we were using that, we saw the currency was way below what it typically had been. So we bought low and were able to sell relatively high. So that's why we were looking at longer trends, which is why we purchased these currencies. So our strategy, as I said early on in the project, was we looked more at the 1 day and the 1 week because we were just unsure that the 1 and the 4 hour charts were really that reliable. And we thought that it was just going to be too difficult to gauge off of that short period of time. However, as we moved on, we strictly used some 1 and 4 hour charts and would even look at shorter periods of time, including the 30 and 15-minute mark time frames if we were trading very quickly. So our final status, this was a screenshot after we sold off everything to make it easy, was we had a net loss of just under $40, which wasn't bad and it wasn't good. To say that we succeeded with our safe strategy was very true. And going forward, we learned a few lessons. And that's just summarizing our lost $40. And the biggest thing we learned was we held our currencies too long. You really only want to hold them for anywhere from sometime in that day for no longer than really a week. However, we were all more familiar with stock market trading, and typically you aren't trading stocks and buying them and selling them every day. So we were just going to hold them for a long period of time. And the light just went off. Power just went off for a second. My apologies for that. But we treated them like long-term stocks. So we did all market orders just because we were looking at it at that period of time, and we weren't too familiar with purchasing or buying or selling them at a specific price. So early on, these were some of our earliest trades. You can see the number of units we purchased were very small. However, at the time, it felt like these were very large orders because typically when you trade stocks, if you bought 50 of a stock, unless they were a penny stock or something very small, it's a good amount of money. So we thought these would make pretty good profits if we bought the right stocks. However, as we went on, we learned we weren't making or losing very much money. So the second round of stocks, you can see we increased to buy between 500 and 1,000. And even at that time, it was a little concerning because we knew we could have more losses. And like I said, we were a very safe and conservative strategy. So buying 500 and 1,000 just seemed unheard of at the time. However, at the end, towards the end of the project, we were getting more familiar and a little bit more comfortable with buying 10,000 of a currency, which typically we would buy. We use the Japanese yen against the US dollar or the Japanese yen against the euro for our larger currencies. But if we were to reflect on it today, which we are, what we would have done was we would have bought them in probably around 50,000 per currency. That way we could actually have a chance to make some significant money. And we would have sold them within that day, no more than holding them for 1 or 2 days. Some of them we might have only held for 20 or 30 minutes. just to take a profit or limit our loss. Now, the problem with that was we have to look at our stop losses, which we did, and we don't want to be too premature with stop losses, but we do feel like trading them in the short term would have been very beneficial if we do this project over again, or if we were to do this as part of our jobs or just as a way to possibly earn money in the future. So that's the end of our project. We learned a lot about currency trading. Most importantly, not to treat it like the stock market, because in the stock market, realistically, you're going to hold stocks for months, if not years or tens of years. Whereas currencies, you're going to buy them very quickly and sell them in an equal quickness of time.